All right, welcome back to English and English Podcast. That's Brett.
That's Eric.
And it's just the same stuff. It's going to be awesome once again. It's going to
yeah?
be so glorious. You're going to poop out your mouth hole and breathe out your poop hole.
Wow, that's what everyone wants.
Like,
that's the
we just lost our viewership down to 13%.
After massive, catastrophic physical,
Anomalies.
Their viewership suddenly dropped for some reason.
Yeah. So before
I don't know. We were fulfilling their wildest dreams.
All right, let's get
Everyone wants to
let's
reverse
get into our
break.
trends.
Mm-hmm.
Let me bring
Let's
up
take
the
a look.
Google.
Let's
Google Trends.
Google Trends, and also let's see what the top news stories. If you just go to the news tab and Google News, because the trends have been disappointing to us.
Yeah, they're not
Humanity-
specific. Is the problem?
Yeah, exactly. Humanity is searching the dumb things.
Well, I don't know if it's just searches because that's.
I don't think this
different.
is. I think we need to find a better site to aggregate the appropriate
To look at
searching
more of what
term.
we're looking for.
Right,
Like what's
exactly.
specific, not just
Because-
the term like FIFA World Cup. Like that's not what we're looking for.
Right, we're looking for what
Like
kind
the
of stories
stories, yeah.
are
Specifically.
enthralling the public, so we
Right,
can mock their
specifically.
taste in stories. Probably.
Well, here we have in every state in the union, Shark Week is a more searched term, except for in North Carolina where it is Shark Attack. It's more
Because there was recent shark
because
attack.
there've been like 5 people have been attacked.
Right.
All right, trends, trending stories. Wimbledon.
Fascinating.
Barack Obama, Islamic State of Iraq and Levant. Yeah, they call it Iraq and Levant now instead of Iraq and Syria because like ISIS was something else that they didn't want to confuse it with. So now the Levant is another name for Syria. It's kind of weird.
I mean, that's an ancient term, like in the
ISIL.
Lebanon.
That's
or
what I
the
mean.
Levant.
Yeah, but it's I don't remember why they specifically.
But that was
got
just
away
a
from ISIS.
That was just a name for that land.
It's like the region.
The region, not for.
Well, it's like saying Persian or
country.
something, I guess.
Right. Yeah. It's like saying the Middle East, but waiting to be way more like
soccer
about it. Like I push
stuff.
up my glasses.
You know, speaking of soccer, here we go. Women's World Cup. I read some article. Someone posted something where bitching about how the women received a fraction of the pay that the men did.
Okay.
Which
Well, they
is like the
receive
usual.
a fraction of the viewership.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, and that's what I was looking up. The viewership was actually the most recent Women's Cup win was the most watched soccer event in America so far.
Okay.
But the point is that doesn't mean they're bringing in more revenue.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Not necessarily.
Because one event
And
necessarily.
also, that may have not been the case last year. That's the problem. Your pay
Right.
is always scaled to
Exactly.
the last year.
It's like
in those
bottom
kind
line.
of
And what I just mentioned to somebody on Facebook who posted, a friend of mine who posted something bitching about it. I was like, first of all, I asked, are women specifically barred from participating in the main national teams? I don't know if they are. Like in football, there's something that says women can't play.
Right.
They just can't play. You know what I mean? But there's nothing barring them. Now, if that's
Well,
the
actually,
case,
a lot of sports organizations specifically are split into men and women's
well,
teams.
they have. Well, my point is they always have a specific women's team, but the quote unquote men's team doesn't normally usually ban women.
Yeah.
They just never going to be
Well,
competitive.
that's funny. It's funny both
So that's
ways.
what my question
People
was. Is
try to
that
have their cake.
I
and
don't
eat it,
know
too.
if the FIFA rules ban women from playing on the national team, because if they don't, then you can say they have the same opportunity to pay for that bigger payout
Right.
than anyone else.
But
I had the same
The
opportunity to play
difference
for it.
here than like the NFL and stuff, FIFA's an international organization, not an American one. You can't complain that our American women's team is not paid as much. Well, ask Brussels or wherever
Well, they
the
were
hell it's
talking. Yeah.
located,
Well, they
you
don't
know?
get paid by FIFA. They
No.
get paid by the countries, and they complain. They said,
Well, by the sports organization within that country that is a
well, the country,
participatory
like when Germany
body.
won, they paid the team $35 million, and they paid the players each like $400,000 or something like that. And then when the women won, America paid them like the team $2 million, and the women got I don't know what. So they just think that that's fucked up or whatever. But my point was, first of all, they could play for the national teams and have the same shot at this huge playout if they allow them. But if they don't allow them, then the only argument should be that they should be able to. Because if you're arguing that a separate event should get the same amount of money just because, that doesn't really
Right.
make sense. Because as I
It
explained,
depends on factors. If it
well, just
turns
because.
out-
It doesn't
yeah,
mean it
just-
shouldn't, but it definitely doesn't mean it just should automatically.
Inherently, yeah.
Right. Because that's why I said, as much as people would probably not want to admit this, the women are not the best soccer players in the world, the ones who just won. They're the best women's soccer players. They didn't win the World Cup. They
Yeah.
won the Women's World Cup.
Right.
It's a separate event. Now, you
Yeah.
could make an argument for why, you could present data. If they're bringing in just as much money and they're getting a smaller cut, then they would have a legitimate beef. But I don't think that's the case. It's certainly not, like, even if it's big here, most other countries don't even care as much about women's soccer as the United States does.
Right, yeah.
So it's just not as big of an event
As the men's
worldwide
soccer or
and
the-
nationally. There's just
yeah.
not as much money going into it either.
Right.
Because there's no base in pro women's soccer really like there is in most of these other sports where there's a lot of money flowing in, and then there's a national event. Like people only care at the World Cup and because we're winning. You know what
exactly.
I mean? So,
Nobody,
it's not like a culture
all of a sudden, all
women's
these
soccer.
people came out to watch women's soccer and they're complaining.
And it's becoming more popular. And if
it
gets to the point where they're bringing in the model revenue, then they'll be
even as they complain
money.
about it. Just the fact that they watched it this year will help it make more money next year.
And it's going to make... And I mean, look at what... Think of how much they got paid 10 years ago or whatever. It's probably nothing.
They probably almost didn't exist in America.
But the bottom line
is
like I said, they didn't win the World Cup. They won the Women's World Cup. So you can't really compare that. It'd just be like bitching that Demetrius Johnson isn't getting paid as much as the heavyweight champion. He's not the best fighter in the world. He's the best fighter in his weight class.
Right.
And he's never going to beat the heavyweights.
Right.
You know, like some crazy fighters may be able to beat people 1 or 2 weight classes above them, and they get rich and famous when they do that. You know what I mean? When they're that good. And he's incredibly good, but he's not the best fighter in the world, and he shouldn't get quite the same accolades. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then it's the same thing. They're not. But even still, just like with fighting, you could have a particular person who just is famous and brings in more money, like maybe a Conor McGregor or somebody who's just notorious.
Anybody who's super popular.
Right, they bring in more revenue so they get paid more because they're putting asses in seats.
Put more money in the table.
Yeah, they're putting asses in seats. And if the women's soccer is doing that and they're just being stingy with the money, which is possible, but I doubt it.
Well, it's probable, but not for the reasons people think.
I mean, and probably not to the extent. Like, I don't think the women's soccer team or like organization has $35 million that they could just give to the team. Like, there's not that kind of money floating around in women's soccer.
Exactly. I think it's both. I think it's the fact that, like all sports,
people are
like
buying
all big
shitloads of women's soccer jerseys.
They don't want to pay
and fathead wall decals and posters, like they are for all the major.
They're not making David
country.
Beckham money off of these women.
Yeah, they're not
doing yet anyway.
Right, and if they are, then they'll get more money.
Right, they'll be able to negotiate next year.
But if I'm wrong and that is the case, then they have beef. But I don't think it is. I haven't been able to find anything.
But if they do have beef, it's the same beef that sports people of both sexes have.
And has nothing to do with gender.
The owners never want to pay.
It has to do with this particular group thinks that they're worth more because they're not getting as big of a share. But again, as big a share of what? They're probably getting a bigger share than some other things.
Right, yeah.
So how do you really, just because it's soccer, they should automatically get the same? That's not necessarily true.
Right.
It's a good starting point for an
argument. They'll get more next year because they won this year. You know what I mean? Like any time you win the Super Bowl, you get to come back and be like, it's going to take some more money to keep me on this team now, man.
Right. And also, I mean, just like with other sports, and I'm using UFC again, when you don't have a lot of other places you can go, your bargaining power is sort of diminished.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I said, if there's not a huge, even national or international, just pro women's soccer base, there's not like, what are they going to say? Like,
or at least no tradition of like
200,000 isn't enough for me or whatever. Or the $2 million they give me team is enough.
There's obviously a fairly big women's international soccer group that all these countries compete in, but it's not like people from these countries free agent themselves out to other countries.
And my point is not that it's big for the World Cup, but that like outside the World Cup, just like with Olympic sports.
Yeah, exactly.
You could be the very best at the Olympic sport, but if there's no base of pro athletics in that sport outside of that, or weightlifting, you're not going to be making
shot put throwing
in
the pro circuit, year round. It's like,
and I mean there is for most of it, but it's just small, so they get paid a lot less than something like football. So that didn't make sense to me. But while we're on the subject of feminism, I saw this article that said a jogger like a creeper attacked the wrong jogger or something because it was this woman who was a U.S. Marshal. Yeah. And I was like, all right, cool. She like draw down on this guy or tase him or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the article was like, she was jogging, noticed that the guy was following her, and then he ran up and like grabbed her, groped her ass, and pulled her shorts down, and she screamed for help, and the guy ran away. And then she chased after, and that was like she picked on the wrong guy. He wasn't ready for these piercing screams.
Right. Well, I mean, congratulations or not.
She did chase after the guy, apparently, after identifying herself as an officer, and kick him in the nuts, which was probably not smart.
No,
because this guy, they said he was 6'4" and 200 pounds. If he just decided to fight her, then it would have not been evil.
Grabbed her ass and pulled her pants down, and then ran off, or ran off
when she started screaming for help.
Okay.
But that's my point. Is that's not really a good example of picking the wrong person. This isn't like a female issue.
It's still a good thing.
You picked on the wrong dude. He screamed and scared you.
Right, exactly. His piercing wails.
Yeah, exactly. Or urinated on himself, and it's just like, I can't. Such a defense mechanism.
It's good for them that it averted disaster.
It's great, but that's not a good, accurate headline.
Good outcome, but it's not an outline. It's not an accurate headline for how badass this person was. I mean,
She did chase him down
Nothing
after,
he
but
did
again,
was wrong,
right.
except for maybe chasing them down afterwards
without a gun or
unarmed.
anything. Because if he'd even decided to fight her,
I would advocate probably that thing for anyone else who does not have any experience fighting. Definitely make a scene, just go crazy
because it works.
Because it works.
And it's definitely what she should have done in that situation. It works.
So it's 100% the right thing to do. Not mocking this woman at all, but whoever wrote the story saying, messed with the wrong girl. Like, oh yeah, Kate Beckett up in here, high kicking in heels. You know, like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that's what I thought was funny. It was not anything to do with the woman, but just the article.
Right, yeah, exactly. I know that. I'm just pointing it out.
Of how they represented it.
Part of our audience out there, which they're probably not. We probably have a better audience.
Like, Wooly picked on the wrong kid when he was like,
pissed his pants and told his teacher
right away. Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he picked up the wrong
so I kept it from
dog.
being beat up, which is good, but it doesn't. Not a good example of, like, picking the wrong one, so to speak.
Picking the wrong one is like, you know, in the movies where the guy's like, I just want to be left alone, and then they're like, all right, man, you came to the wrong town. Then he breaks their hand.
Right.
You know,
like any Jason Statham movie.
Right, yeah, exactly.
They're
trying to mess with him. They jab him in the side
right.
drunkenly, and then he's like, you better take that hand back.
Or like in that one, whatever you're thinking about doing, rethink it.
Right, yeah, exactly. That's when you picked on the wrong guy.
Right. That's
I mean, like, for example, I know from
not like I beat him up and he didn't have any money, so I guess that was the wrong guy.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Shit, I picked on the wrong guy.
Like,
he doesn't have any money.
The story of a
this
friend
is not
of ours.
satisfying at all.
It's like a story of a friend of ours whose uncle, he did a picked on the wrong guy type story. Where
right, yeah.
He was
was
closing up shop somewhere that he used to work or own, I can't remember, but
just help
unimportant
out,
detail.
It was a family place.
And so he's, closing the gate in front of the store kind of thing.
Taking the cash out of the
And taking
place.
the cash out of the place and going to deposit. And like a circle of guys, 3 to 5 guys.
4 dudes, yeah.
Show up and kind of like, give us the money. So he just grabs the cage. Like those cages that come down in front of...
it's like a metal door.
Like a metal garage door.
I don't know if
thing.
it was like a bay door or a cage. It doesn't really matter.
Right, it doesn't matter. But he basically...
It was all rusty.
He rolls
door.
down, the whole front of the store, all the windows to seal them up. So he grabs it and just starts slamming his head into it until he's bleeding.
Shit out of it.
And he goes smack, 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 and then turns around, bloody head. Who's next?
No, he said, who's going to take it from?
Oh, who's going to
take
it?
Give us some money, and he just grabs the rusty metal door and headbutts it until blood's streaming down his face, and just goes, "Who's gonna take it?" And they all just run off.
Yeah, that's messing with the wrong guy.
The wrong guy. Yeah.
Like, I to be honest, I probably wouldn't be the guy headlined mess with the wrong guy unless I happened to be, mine would be like, oh, he happened to be carrying.
Right.
And
that's
the
still
situation.
One example, like they got killed because of it, so they picked the wrong
They either
guy.
got shot or the situation was diffused. Because the only incident I've ever been in my life was I produced the weapon and said, you're going back in your car. I'm calling the police, and it was, it was over. But it wasn't oh man, he picked the wrong guy. No, okay, I did the right thing.
It's still technically a better choice in this story.
Right, yes.
He went up to try and start shit, and he could have gotten shot.
Right, it's like, you're going to start shit over a traffic
You're ready and willing to physically
that didn't
dominate
happen,
him
and you better be ready to die for it because I am armed, and I'm calling the police right now.
Not like you screamed and hit on
right,
the car and he couldn't get at you.
Exactly. I didn't say, no!
Exactly.
And then he's like, hey.
So yeah, that's great though.
it's amusing, like I said. Mad props that this person managed to survive unharmed.
Right.
But D props to whoever wrote the story and tried to turn into some champion
a female or even a much smaller dude in any of those situations, or even just a regular unarmed dude, there's little to be gained from chasing the person down. I think that was foolish.
Right, yeah.
If you're not armed or anything.
I mean, I know it's probably just the police instinct in that person.
But that could have been fatal.
But still, like a police officer who had lost their weapon shouldn't be chasing somebody down either.
Right.
Like with no backup and no weapon.
Or at least maybe just to follow them, but not to like accost them. Like she ran up and kicked him in the balls or something, which is
human beings get
glad this guy was a pansy and wasn't willing to fight.
Right, yeah.
Because if he did decide to fight her,
that's
it would
the
have
lesson
ended up
there. The lesson there isn't you mess with the wrong person. The lesson there is be that crazy. If you don't have any weapons upon you, if you have weapons upon you, be calm and let them know it's going to be. The two options are if they look super aggressive, you go higher aggressive right away.
Right.
Produce the weapon, use it, and shut it down. Or if they look like they're just posturing and like ready for a fight, you produce it and say this fight is going to basically show them this fight is going to cost you far more than you anticipated.
And you're willing to.
And I am willing to use lethal force right now to stop this from happening.
Right.
So back off, and then usually that diffuses it. But if they're crazy, then you just go higher crazy and like immediately go into stabbing or shooting or whatever you have to do in terms of like. That situation is rare. But the situations where, let's say, like the people who run up and the first thing they say to you is to attack, not like they come up and be like, hey man, give me your money.
Right.
Like,
they just jump you.
They just jump you immediately. Then it's already on, so you better get it on too.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in whoever starts the fight doesn't get to complain about how it ends.
Right. Yeah. But I'll say for the people who are not armed and
Yeah, because you don't start a fight if there doesn't need to be one.
Yeah, exactly. Your options are to disengage as best as possible, or just make yourself seem so crazy
that they're not.
They're like, this is not worth it. But that doesn't always work necessarily because some people are just already.
It's a
crazier
last-ditch effort, but I mean, it's worth trying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of people just don't want to get caught, so making noise and making a scene,
right? They don't want attention, so they're
trying to do it when they think the instinct is to catch
something that
lone prey.
Didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, that's the end of it.
This is totally unrelated. I was reading something about this. You probably know more about this than I do, but I don't know if it's big news. But there was something about a video game, like Kickstarter, that raised like $85 million, and now they're having trouble like making it or something.
There's been a couple
something
like
Vox
that.
had talked about, but I didn't know. I'd never heard of it because I don't follow video games.
I would have to get more details because that's actually happened
something
to a couple
do with
different
Wing
ones.
Commander.
Ah, okay.
Or like a remake of Wing Commander.
No, somebody was making one like Star Citizen or something, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
It was another one like Wing Commander or whatever, a famous franchise from in the past with a big, giant universe to explore, and you fly a spaceship. And I hesitate to see realistic because you still have faster than light travel and all this stuff, but it was more realistic, deeper kind of space sim than like just flying around in a, Star Fox or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was popular in the PC back in the day, and then somebody made a huge Kickstarter and it got huge backing. If this is the one I'm thinking of, it's the one you're talking about.
That is the
got
star
huge backing,
whatever,
and I guess apparently now, of which I don't really know.
It was called RSI or something. It was a company, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. So if it is that, then yeah, it's happened to other games too. Now, like, they spent all that money in the years to trying to make it. They burned through all the money, and they're still not done making it, kind of thing. Their reach exceeded their grasp, and they didn't budget themselves appropriately. And of course, that's just one of the downsides to crowdfunding like that. It's like, you don't really own a stock in the company. You're just giving them money up front.
Yeah.
Sometimes it makes sense of like, you're pre-ordering this stuff so they know how many units they can sell, so that if they're a good business, they'll budget themselves for like, okay, we know we've already made a
company where they have one of the item, they know they can make it. It's just a question of cost.
Right. Or it's
very
like,
low chance of risk.
It just removes the risk. Exactly. Like, let's say a company gets investors saying, we think we can sell 1 million copies of this game.
Right.
Well, if you just sell 1 million copies, you already know what your budget is.
Right.
You say, I've sold 1 million copies. We need to make this game at under, 50 million because you sold $50 a copy at 1 million copies. And so you budget yourself appropriately. Well, they didn't do that.
Even though they apparently had an obscene amount of money.
Right, yeah.
They just hemorrhaged it.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows what happened there? I can't say I know anything more than that, and I'm not even sure that's exactly the right company.
Here's an interesting one. After over 20 years as the face of Scientology, Tom Cruise may be leaving the organization.
I think I saw that in a tabloid.
Good for him. Hope he gets out there without them messing with him too much.
Right, yeah.
We're just talking about this because apparently one of our friends was saying that they do all these like sessions with this weird like emotion meter supposed to tell if you're improving, and apparently they record them all. So one of the
dirt on you.
Well, just like it's to track your progress. But yeah,
right,
one of the theories is the reason some of these high tech guys will never, or high tech not, but
high
profile actors and people won't ever say anything about it or leave it is because they assume that after 10 or 20 years of doing these things, they probably have a lot of information in these like records that they could, or just stuff that they wouldn't want that they're trying to use against them. Well, if nothing else, they've already invested so much money.
If nothing else, I think they record it like that just so that their counselors or priests can emotionally manipulate these people. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, even if it never is planned to see the light of day, they know what their embarrassing secrets are and can guide them, like in a codependent relationship where you need the Church of Scientology to get through this.
Reports that his 9-year-old daughter Suri is on the verge of becoming labeled a suppressive person. Basically, the worst thing that you can be, according to the Church, which would mean that he basically couldn't contact her.
Couldn't contact his own daughter.
Right, like, because she's a subversive or a suppressive or whatever they want to call it.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, yeah, more power to the guy. I hope he is able to extricate himself. If he wishes, I hope he's able to extricate himself as cleanly as possible. Because, I get it. In matters of religion, regardless of what I may think personally about the Church of Scientology and its legitimacy as a philosophy of true morals and religion. Matters of religion are important. Like having a life philosophy of some sort is one of those fundamental things in people, and so getting away from that is difficult, especially if it's also backed by an organization that wants to make you say that you got to disown your kid.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he'll get out. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. So I guess
Now that we've dealt with all the great questions of our time.
Burning questions of our time.
Of society.
With our learned discourse on it.
It's a house of learned doctors.
Right. Yeah, something I was thinking about recently that I think would be good for us to put in the podcast here. It's just like movies that people should see. And in the sense of like, there's some movies that probably didn't get a lot of critical acclaim per se, but are actually just good movies, like with either a good message or they're well crafted, or like, I think, because that's something that occurs to me a lot.
Eurotrip.
Yes, Eurotrip's one of them. Yeah, and Mr. Bean,
Mr. Bean.
What was the one where he had like Whistler's painting?
That was the
just the Mr. Bean movie.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And that became even more funny when that woman
actually
messed up the
it,
Jesus painted Echo Homo, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And people made the gifts with him, like, because it was so similar to what happened in the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Complete with drawing like an absurdly ridiculous simple face on top of the big
whited out
blotch.
Yeah, exactly. It was so life imitating
this is
art.
Literally what happened in Mr. Bean movie.
Right.
That's when you know you fucked up if your life echoes something that happened in a Mr. Bean movie.
Rowan Atkinson portrayed you comically ahead of his
like,
time. Yeah, you've slid down the slippery slope a little bit.
But he actually fixed it.
Right, yeah.
Unlike in real life.
Right, yeah.
We put like an egg residue on the poster to make it look like it was an old canvas or something.
Right, yeah, exactly. That's right. He like brushed on patina onto the poster.
Onto one of the posters from the gift shop and put like a patina on it and then hung it in the frame. And
they never knew it was a forgery.
No one was the wiser. Oh, that reminds me. There was actually this guy who apparently broke into this art gallery somewhere or museum.
Yeah.
Over, I think it was a period of years. But he hung instead of taking something, he just hung his own paintings in there.
Tom Green did this once on his show. Like, there's a bit you can find on YouTube where he did that too.
Hilarious. But this was like it actually happened, and I don't know what ever became of it. But I think they found out, and all they could really get him for was like breaking and entering.
Right?
He
Yeah.
didn't take anything. Yeah.
No, Tom Green did this too. He made a really crude painting, and he put one of those little cards like beside it where it says
$10,000 or whatever.
Well, no, like those cards they have in museums that say the artist and like what it represents,
title, the title on canvas.
Yeah, exactly. And so he found a blank spot on the wall, hung it, and put the little card there, and then he snuck in with it, and then surreptitiously had his crew filming it.
See what people
until
said
eventually,
about
he would stand there and like when the school groups would come up, he would ask them about that, and be like, "What do you think about this?" And like, "I don't know, it's pretty crude." He's like, "What do you think if we did this?" And he started drawing on it.
Like, oh.
And so security comes up like, "You can't draw on the paintings." He's like,
"No, it's okay.
It's my painting." And like, "What is this doing here?" They basically turned into a whole thing, and he had to flee the scene. Good practical joke, probably kind of illegal. I don't know.
That's hilarious.
But so he started drawing right on the canvas, and everyone was freaking out.
But that also reminds me of this one skit that Jimmy Kimmel did on. I think it was the Man Show skit. It wasn't on Jimmy Kimmel. It was way back in the day.
Right.
Where they had some guy. It wasn't even him. It was just like one of their undercover agents, and he went to garage sales and would with things. They brought things with them that were ridiculous, and would be like, "How much for this autographed picture of Hitler?" And like full out of dildo, or and one of them was like a mug, and the guy picked it up, and as soon as he made eye contact with the person who was running the sale, he just ran off and be like, hey, but it was something that he had brought with him.
It wasn't even their mug, right?
Yeah.
But instinct being what it is.
Right, it was absurd stuff like an autographed picture of Hitler or a giant dildo or something.
Right, yeah.
How much for this? And
that's not mine. Or they try to get money anyway, so they'd be like, I don't know, $5?
Right.
Name me a price.
That's what I would do.
That's a clever trick.
I would be like, shit, $5?
yeah, exactly. I don't know.
What
do you want?
That. I actually had someone leave something at a garage sale one time. They told me. They were just like, they needed space in their
vehicle for something else.
A bunch of stuff they bought, so they left a vacuum cleaner that worked apparently, like a little one, some sort of dust vac. And I sold it for $2 just to get rid of it. Free $2.
All right, there you go.
And it didn't really change
anything. That's nice.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, back to the movies. What I was thinking is, this occurs to me a lot, is that, and this will kind of spark off our discussion
hidden
here.
Gems.
Yeah, there's hidden gems, but there's also the fact that we'll have to go into this in depth some year. Maybe do some research. I'll need to, but I think a lot about okay, they have the Academy Awards and such, and they pick whatever they think is the best movie of the year. It'd be interesting to know and go back to these movies that never really got the consideration for the Academy Awards, but were actually more influential in that year or in the next several years. Like, for example, I guarantee you things like Rambo never got any nods from the Academy.
Right.
But nobody knows the year Rambo came out. Like, nobody but a super movie buff knows what other movie was the award that year. Like, I don't.
Yeah. Right.
Again, it's because I don't remember what year Rambo came out. But I mean, like, I can guarantee you.
Blood?
Yeah.
Shit, I think it was like
First Blood Part 2 or whatever. I'm thinking like, but even First Blood itself, you know, like both of them had more impact on society consciousness than
and just like cultural zeitgeist.
I would think than like what necessarily came out from just by basically the Academy picks movies for its own.
Well, they're
reasons.
art awards, you know. They're not they're not necessarily have anything to do with how well the movie.
Well, it's also
performed,
because
how
their
popular
idea
it was.
of art is different. Like,
but I mean, it's not even choosing ones that were popular necessarily.
Right,
it's
right.
just
But I'm
movies
saying
that happened.
I'm not even talking about movies that were popular necessarily. I'm saying like let's say an unpopular movie.
But I mean, you're talking about popularity over long term,
right?
Which isn't necessarily what they're even measuring for.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, not even popularity over long term, just influence. Like the amount, like there's some movies that win Academy Awards, like Godfather or something, that
also
obviously influenced a whole ton of filmmakers, and people, talk about it all the time. There's others that never got any accolades, but
there's also others that did get the accolades and just never.
Right. Nobody ever brings them up anymore.
Yeah.
When you're talking about movies you have to see to understand cinema over the century, they just don't get mentioned, But yeah, like, so kind of tied into that, but just in general of like the idea of movies that you got to see that you may not get, like movies that are, I guess really what it is, movies that are deeper than you think. Like there's a lot of movies out there
well done,
not
necessarily thought of being like really good masterpieces.
For example, one of them to start off here, like I feel like Conan the Barbarian, like the first one with Arnold Schwarzenegger, not the second. And not whatever new one, which I didn't even see.
That was terrible.
I heard.
With Jason Momoa.
Yeah.
It's just crap.
Yeah. And this also goes into, the next one I'll say is like the original Mad Max ones in comparison to the first one here, or the newest one here. But like, the original Conan is actually a great movie. It's pretty cheesy at this point, I think, just because the special effects are
But
old.
not like people think.
They
think of the cheese of like the second one.
Right, but what's crazy about it is it's a pretty bloody, violent movie, but it's not like a schlock bloody, violent movie, even though it's pretty cheesy blood effects, just like tomato paste.
It's not gratuitous.
It's not gratuitous, and it's not like, the Michael Bay of its times kind of thing. It's actually kind of like deep soul to it, because the whole premise of the movie is this tortured guy who is like a slave and an orphan and everything else, like finding the meaning of like masculinity and strength and like, real steel. Yeah, it sounds all goofy in Schwarzenegger's voice, but like the story is pretty philosophical almost, because it's in the end it's almost a story about like, overcoming abuse, because the whole story is like him overcoming his captor and the man who killed his parents and facing him one-on-one eventually, and initially, he is kind of like ensorcelled by his eye powers, just like everybody else. Like, so it's kind of representational of like, some people can't face their, you fall under the spell of the charismatic evil person kind of thing, even though they are hurting you, but then he breaks it
in a different way for him, but still was
right. Yeah, I mean it's made literal in the movie. It's magical, kind of like hypnotizing powers, but it's representational of like of that kind of thing. And then he breaks through it, and it's also just about like it's also got a badass speech in there. Like his prayer at the end is just like I've never prayed to you. I
grant me one request. Grant me revenge.
Right, but it's not. It's like no one will remember why we fought this day. Right. They will only know that few stood against many.
Right.
So stand with us now. Like grant me revenge.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
They're making the new King Conan.
It's gonna have big shoes to fill, because that's what I'm saying. Like,
but as long as they don't try to make it anything that it's not, you know what I mean? Like they just actually don't try to make it all
like
crazy,
the new one with
flipping
Momoa.
around,
yeah, exactly.
crazy, weird.
Like that's the thing. Like the greatest thing
shit
about Conan wasn't that like there was even necessarily
that
awesome
it was realistically
fight scenes.
subdued.
It was realistically subdued in a way, and it was just about it was just kind of like about.
I mean, that's the problem with movies in general now, is they don't have the realist, and everything is just it has to be super epic in every aspect of.
Right, and not epic. Like the epicness in good movies comes from like Conan.
I mean like an overarching epic theme, but like every fight scene, every move, everything is ridiculously
it's
epic.
Difference between spectacle and epic, because like Conan is epic because the themes are epic, like life and death questions,
but every
philosophical questions.
Sword swing isn't like some crazy flipping move
exactly.
and everything.
No.
It's a realistic.
Every fight is important though, because there's an emotional investment of his personal quest in it. And then not just, this fight is important. Why? Well, because there's 30 guys, and they're all on motorcycles, you know, and everything. Which, again, that's why I liked, like, Captain America Winter Soldier better than, like, Avengers 2 and stuff like that came after, is it felt like that.
Yeah, exactly.
It felt like they had plenty of ridiculous stunts in that movie, but they were just subdued enough compared to, like, Thor or Superman running around, you know, all CG the whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
And that it feels cool when Captain America, like, lands out of a 10-story building and bounces off his shield and survives.
Right.
It feels realistic, like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
How did he do that? You know, like, you know, get down there and stop him, you know.
But it doesn't just, like, brush it off. Like,
Yeah, it doesn't just brush it off. And it's also, every fight was about him standing his ground on a moral principle. Like, the whole thing went that way
and
because...
not just working out because he's a superhero and shit.
Right, and not automatically coming into conflict because action scenes are cool.
Yeah.
You know, like, what I mean?
Right.
Which, speaking of that, like, standing your ground kind of, like, storylines, I recently watched a series, I think it's on Amazon only, but it's called Bosch.
I've heard of that one. I haven't seen it.
It's just a crime procedural about a detective based on some novels.
It's Amazon Prime. It's like their version of Netflix originals.
Right, exactly. But it was a pretty good show. Like, it's only like one season, 10 episodes or something like that.
Okay.
But it was a cool one because the actor Titus Wellinger, I believe.
Yeah, I know who it is. I didn't know his name, but I recognize him from stuff.
It's a pretty, like, straight, you know, kind of subdued character.
Yeah.
But what's cool about it is it's kind of like that. Like, it's set in the modern times, and it's kind of a story of, like, he just goes in one direction. Wants to solve the case, wants to find the truth. But all of the petty politics of modern police forces and all of the rules about what you're allowed and not allowed to do, you know, kind of try to get in his way. And, you know, and he's just like, I'm, you know, just trying to go forward and to get this case solved, you know. And, like, and it's not, like, blown over the top, like, oh man.
Yeah, I didn't know any. I knew it was a police procedural, but other than that, I didn't know pretty much anything about it.
It's not like amazing, you know, everything, but it was just I like those kind of stories where it's like the man who just kind of
well, that's what I liked about like Jack Reacher is that it wasn't all over the. I mean, obviously they have the ridiculousness of he's super good at everything, but I mean, even in a movie like that, which is pretty ridiculous by like a 70s movie standard, it's nothing compared to the modern movies.
Yeah, where like even these more, you know, everybody's doing Matrix moves in the real world.
And just everything, they're just the best at everything. Nothing ever touches them. You know everything's going to work out. And just, and they're not cool in ways that are meaningful in real life. Right,
it's actually cooler when you can feel that grit, that like, you know.
Like Dirty Harry or something.
Right, yeah, exactly. Or like, you know, that was one of the cool things about Jack Reacher is the car chase scenes felt better because the cars are fishtailing
and like lurching and like he stalls it for a second,
you know, over the curbs and stuff, and so it feels like it would really feel in a car chase where like
felt more visceral.
This is about to go off the rails.
Right, you could tell he didn't have complete control because you wouldn't, and no one would in a car chase like that. Especially just driving a normal car, not like a race car.
It's not like Bad Boys 2 where they make action happen by zooming in the camera,
like timing how you're driving under, flipping other cars, flipping in the road.
And right,
yeah, that stuff can be entertaining, but it's a different type of movie.
Right, yeah, that's basically a ballet with cars.
It's more spectacle. It's not the same. Yeah.
And there are plenty of those like that are entertaining, but something about
it's not mutually exclusive. I mean, that's
there's
why
just
they do it.
too many movies like that aren't
it's
even
just a fireworks show, basically, in movie format, though. You know,
yeah, exactly. It's pre-programmed on a computer to happen at the right time if the light show goes off.
And but it doesn't bring out the same. You only ever get the one emotion, which is just like the adrenaline kind of thing.
Right, or
it's nothing. That's what I mean. But there's nothing deeper to it than that.
Right.
That's why if you go back to like a lot of movies, like something like John Wick or Equilibrium or something that has a lot of like emotional impact on like and you really care about them being successful and whatever.
Right.
There's usually only ever like 2 or 3 actual fight scenes through the movie. It's
Yeah,
less than you think because you go back and like, man, that movie had this is like crazy action, but it's really only like 2 or 3
It's
scenes.
just that each action scene was important,
so it has a lot of gravitas
for the most part. Yeah,
right. It's important for the plot and for the characters.
What makes Equilibrium,
and you build up to like why you understand his motivations.
Right. Yeah. What made Equilibrium
really
so badass? It's not even that the fight scenes were the coolest. I mean, they were cool in their own unique, you know, choreographed way.
But it was how meaningful.
But it was how at that one part of the end he just snaps, goes cold, and kills everybody.
Right.
You know, like that's what made it cool.
Or you like why he's doing it. Like you feel the tension built up. Like he's dogs in the trunk and they're fighting. You know, it's not like he runs in there and just kills everyone.
It wasn't that like every scene. I mean, every scene he's pretty badass and like
and actually having a pocket like that. if the movie had been like nonstop action, any of that is kind of just another scene of action. But when you build up and it's like bam out of nowhere, it's like whoa, it makes it even better.
The best thing about the movie is that moment where they're lie detector testing him.
Right,
yeah, and he just like flatlines, like all motion stops, and he decides, I'm killing everybody. You know, he's like, he snaps.
I like nerded out.
Yeah, it was just like, oh shit, yes, yeah. It's just like he looks up, they're torturing him by like mocking him, like we foiled all of your plans, like
yeah, exactly.
everything you've worked for has been a lie.
It was just like this. So you have to do what we say, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was just like that, and it was so badass because instead of just like caving or being like, oh no, you've got me, he's just like.
Well, also like because they didn't have it work. In a lot of movies, they'll have something just work out.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like it'll just work out. Like no, he didn't. He just had to bulldoze his way through, and it, you know.
Right. Yeah. He wasn't able to save the girl. He wasn't, but he did decide to just, you know what, I will punish everybody.
Right. It wasn't like all of a sudden like, oh no, they've got me. Then the skylight bursts in, and all his buddies are there.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
I've been saved.
Right. Which is a story about pushing a man too far, and he snaps and kills you. Right. Right.
Which was great.
Yeah.
So that was a good.
That was great, and then there's plenty of other movies that like. Maybe people, depending on their age range, may not have seen. Like, that's something also that occurs to me a lot, too. There's, like, these movies that they're remaking now that sometimes people will see it, and it'll be the first time they ever see it. They won't know the original version. Like, they're trying to remake Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh, I know. Like, all the ones that are iconic because of, like, a combination of director, actor, era, everything. It's like, not going to be able to be remade. I don't think you can remake
Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah.
That cheesy 80s-ness and Kurt Russell and
the
John
actual
Carpenter
specific John Carpenter, Kurt Russell team.
Right. And also, same thing with Escape from New York. I don't know that you can
same
remake
team, same duo.
Right,
you know,
like what worked is because that was that kind of cheesy.
If you like trying to remake the Big Lebowski,
Big Lebowski, you cannot remake that,
right?
Because it is indicative of its time.
And the other actors working together with each other.
Like you can't remake Casablanca either. Right. You know what I mean?
You can redo the story, but it's not going to be this capture what made that good. Right. Some of those movies are good just because. I mean, they're also good because they have a good story. Right. But it's not like if you just
that's what makes
redo
them great,
that
though.
story.
They're not just a good story. They're a good story plucked with a slice of the what's the word I'm looking for? The zeitgeist of the time.
Yeah.
You know, and so to take them away from that zeitgeist also loses a piece of that movie.
Right.
You know, it's not just that the structure of the story is good. It's that every piece worked, and part of that piece is the time frame and the people that made it.
Yeah.
At that time, you know, like for example, they remade what was it? Another John Carpenter remake one, but they remade what's it called? Precinct 21.
Precinct 19.
19 or what? No,
Precinct.
I thought it was 21.
Precinct 13.
13. Yeah. Precinct 13.
Yeah. I knew it was in there.
Yeah.
But they changed the total elements.
So part of it was they changed it, which made it worse. But the reason they changed it is because the zeitgeist at the time is different.
Right. But then you're not making the same movie.
You're not making the same
point?
movie. Yeah. Like the original one.
All you're doing is just trying to bypass.
The new one has like corrupt cops assaulting this place where one lone good cop is going to hold out.
Totally different.
The original one is just roaming bands.
It was like what was this huge anarchist? Like,
like
they didn't even explain it, which was awesome.
They just it was great. They picked on one guy, said we're going to kill this guy today. Yeah. And then he fled into a police station, and so they decided to all go, and they weren't going to stop. And it was just like maddening and crazy. It was like facing vandals.
It was almost like a zombie movie, but with people who weren't zombies. Like, you just didn't know what was going on. The characters didn't. You didn't either. So you're like right there with them.
They were just crazed
not like this
anarchists.
one cop who's trying to take out a witness.
They're not even really anarchists because they don't have a political statement. They're just like
that works within the actual definition.
Right?
Of
yeah, but like true like nihilist anarchists.
Right,
like we've marked our prey.
This is a giant gang of like.
Yeah, we marked our prey and we want blood, you know, like kind of thing. You know, it's there's been other movies like that too, from like westerns, you know, where like the gang says like this guy's ours, we got to beef with him, not with the town. Send him out, and we'll kill him, and you can all be left alone. But the sheriff is like, can't do that, and then he's got to fight off the waves. They think it's like a good story, but making it corrupt cops after is a valid story, probably actually closer to the times, but it's not as It's not the same story, and it's not as compelling. Like, it was just so crazy in, like, Precinct 13. Like, you know, John Carpenter can just do those crazy thug weirdos better than anybody. Just like the guys driving around with strange haircuts and doing weird things in the back of the
guy
cars.
that came out on Escape from New York to meet the first chopper that lands to the president, and he's just like... has like this big weird Vegeta hair.
Right, yeah, exactly.
For no
all
reason.
This weird stuff. Just like back to the early Mad Max. Like, they had that stuff too.
Well, the first Mad Max actually was not good. I rewatched it again.
I mean,
but
Road Warrior is what
like
everybody really knows about.
The iconic one is Road Warrior.
And the new Mad Max is good, and it's good in a more like its world is more like polished, I would say, or like it's more surreal, but it's also at the same time less
But what was also unique about that one was I think it was the same director.
It is.
So, he gets if the same person wants to come back and redo their shit.
Yeah, so it's a different beast there.
Right, that's a totally different beast.
I guess what I ended up liking, and I mentioned this before when we talked about it, I just liked Mel Gibson better than Tom Hardy. He played a more charismatic
not only as to him, but just as how they wrote the character in the movie.
Yeah, like I can't say if it was Tom Hardy's fault or the writing's fault, but they changed the character.
They did change the character.
And they made him more of like a haunted man and less of just like
this more desperate kind of crazed everyman.
More of just like the dangerous stranger that comes into town, like at westerns. Like I said, again, it was really just a post-apocalyptic western. The guy with the
that's not really how the first one was.
No,
the new one. I mean, that's not really how the new one was.
No, yeah, like the Road Warrior and Thunderdome are just about like he's not trying to get involved, but they make him get involved. Right. So I guess I'm gonna blow
just like,
shit up.
Spaghetti westerns.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Old Charles Bronson movie.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not
Clint
here
Eastwood.
to get involved. This ain't my fight. And then at the end, he's like, "Well, I guess it's my fight."
Right.
You know, cocks the gun and goes to work. You know,
right,
kind of thing.
So that's pretty good.
Magnificent Seven, that's a good movie too. Like, you ever watch the old one with Bronson and Yul Brynner and everything? Yep. It's real cheesy. Of course, those old kind of like things where like there's just smoke and everybody goes, "Oh," clasps their chests as they die. But it's a cool story about like, one of those great stories. Like, of course, it's based off of the Seven Samurai movie from Japan.
It's a reimagining
of it in Western, but they
both have a remake you could do.
Right, yeah. But I mean, like, it's inspired by just like a Shakespeare
story.
Movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's a different story that gets remade, or any Arthurian movie or anything else. Like, you're just retelling the archetype. But and you can do that with modern movies, but you just got to be careful.
Yeah.
We'll see also, again, same thing with like the Ghostbusters. Like, there'll be kids now that don't ever know Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd and them as the Ghostbusters.
Yeah, like remaking that kind of movie, like, okay, I mean, they can do a sequel, I guess, which is fine, but it's not gonna. Yeah, a lot of these things are that way because of, even if they'd even been the same exact movie had been done 5 years in either direction, it might not have even had the same effect.
Right, and not
just
only
like with
that,
hit songs
like,
and everything
it wasn't the premise that was great. It was that team of comedians that was great.
That made it great.
Now the new team of comedians may be a great team of comedians,
but they need to make their own.
Tenor.
Yeah, it's going to be a different situation.
Yeah, like there's always ones that disprove wrong. Like 21 Jump Street is a good example. Then again, though, I never really watched the original show,
so I can't say. And I mean, it wasn't really a comedy, was it?
Yeah, it was like a comedy kind of thing, I think.
Was it? I thought it was more like they did with Starsky and Hutch, where they weren't really a comedy.
Not truly a comedy, I suppose.
Yeah. Not in the same way that these are.
Not super blown out like these, but yeah. But these just kind of went a totally different direction with it, and that's how they got away with it.
And that's right. So they were just good movies in a sort of almost a different genre, and just used some of the same elements.
Right, you just used the same premise.
Right. And it was almost a parody more than anything else.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's almost like a parody that
it's not really a
remake.
remake. They kind of were honest with what it was doing and made it better that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's just something in general. Probably I would like to come up for one of our podcasts with a more comprehensive list or something, but I think we can do
because I think ones that are great like that, like Jack Reacher,
Jack Reacher, like just movie recommendations, because there's a lot of movies out there that, like I said, are deeper than you think, or they got a coolness to them that sticks around. That's what I'm talking about. Like, there's movies that you watch, like, I enjoy that. And then later on, 5-10 years after it comes out, you're like, that should be in my collection.
Right.
Like,
and then there's others, and no matter how cool or entertaining they are, they're just not meaningful.
Right, yeah. Like, the movies that I enjoyed watching in the theater at the time, or like they were the biggest thing ever, or got accolades, and then I will never go back to watch them.
Like some random, like, X-Men movie or something like that.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like, there's not that many of them that, like, stick with me. The movies that stood the test of time kind of thing is what I'm thinking.
Or even a good movie, like, one of the new Star Trek movies or something. Like, they're good movies, but you're not going to go back and watch that.
Right, exactly.
Be like, that really spoke to me. Or
right, exactly.
Shapes
That's what I'm talking about. Like,
view
movies that have, like, good and great, like, messages or portrayals in them. Something where it's like it sticks with you, and stands the test of time. Like, Quickly Down Under is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, it is.
It's pretty old school and cheesy, kind of thing, but it's great because it's the same kind of
it's good in the
story
same way, yeah.
That, like, I like, where, like, he just plays it. He's just a guy who comes in and is like, nope, I'm not going to do that. Yeah. And then they all go against him just because he won't play ball in whatever evil plan they have. And it's not that he's like, going like, I'm the best in the universe, or crazy, backflips. He just happens to be really good at shooting long distance.
Right.
And it's like, but he's very matter of fact about it, and he's just kind of
like... that's what made it great, is the character itself.
Right, yeah, exactly. The character itself, it wasn't the fact that there were great action scenes per se.
Because they're
although
not,
there were.
I mean, they're entertaining, but in terms of like action scenes, that's not what made the movie good.
Right, yeah, it wasn't the backflips off horses, you
Right.
know, and like the crazy shot following the bullet through the
Right.
air in slow
It was
mo,
just a
you know.
realistic portrayal of like a really cool character
Right, exactly.
in a very unique situation.
Right, exactly. The best thing is
We
when they
should
have
just
a
come up
memorable
with
character.
a list of just recommended movies in general
Right,
for different
yeah.
categories and explain why some of them are
Right. What's great about that movie and why it sticks with you.
right.
Exactly. So we'll plan that for one of the later podcasts. Wet your whistle here a little bit. I don't know where that's come from.
That's wetting my whistle. But
That
your
sounds
whistle
like
is
you're
your mouth.
slurping,
No, your
yeah.
mouth is your
I
whistle.
know, but like...
Yeah, but they couldn't see me, so I had to do it. They couldn't see
Had
me
to do
wetting
it.
my whistle, so I had to make it obvious.
Had to make a strange slurping sound.
Right. So that's all for this week.
Adios.
See ya.